Hi everyone, welcome to the Science of Golf Performance YouTube show. I'm Alex and we are continuing our nutrition series today. So we talked about energy balance a little bit, we talked about macronutrients a little bit, and today we're going to touch on micronutrients. So macro versus micro. On a bigger scale, we looked at the macronutrients. On a smaller scale, we're looking at the micronutrients. Not that they're not as important, because they are very important, but they are in a lower scale of what we need than in macronutrients. Macronutrients are essential for us to live and carry out life functions. They equal our energy balance. The micronutrients are very necessary for us, but some people can do without some, or not as much as others. So that's kind of comparing macro versus micro. Now, I want to go over some diet myths and types that we see a lot in the current day with your typical fat loss client, with your athlete looking to increase mass or decrease mass. So there's a lot of current diets out there. There's the keto diet, the paleo diet, the clean eating diet, and all these things have very similar concepts in that they're usually demonizing one macronutrient or one type of food. So in the keto diet, we see that carbs are really bad for you. And in the paleo diet, you see that usually anything packaged or processed is really bad. You're not supposed to eat those. And in the clean eating diet, well, if you're not eating just chicken and broccoli, then you shouldn't be eating anything at all. So those are the types of diets that we see today. And like I said, they're usually demonizing some sort of food, it's usually like a specific macronutrient or a specific brand or category of food. However, we know if we go back to energy balance that it's not necessarily true that these things are bad for us. We can incorporate all sorts of foods, whether they're packaged or processed, as long as they're within our caloric budget for the day. Now, when we touch upon micronutrients some more, we know that this is going to make us focus on like calorie-dense, nutrient-dense foods. We're going to go over the three types today that I just mentioned and how we can apply them to our goals and go and kind of incorporating micronutrients into them. So 3 types of food. These are just categories, and just to preface, like none of them are bad, none of them are necessarily better. They're just what they are. They're categories. So first one we see here is nutrient-dense foods. So your nutrient-dense foods, or you can call them micronutrient-dense foods, are things like your fruits and vegetables, healthy fats, things that you can usually eat in a large amount that are very little calorie. So you think like your big salads and big bowl of vegetables, berries, things that you can eat, and it's a large portion, but you're satisfied after you eat it. It's good for you. There's a lot of vitamins and minerals in it, and that would be your nutrient-dense foods. Then we also have calorie-dense foods. So calorie-dense foods are usually quite the opposite. So they're your packaged things, your fried stuff, donuts, pizza, ice cream, things that we can eat very little, but it yields a lot of calories in the long run, and it's very easy to overeat those things. And then we have the combination of both as a third category here. So we have our nutrient and calorie-dense foods. So these are usually like healthy fats. So a couple examples would be like nut butters, like almond butter, nuts and oils and seeds and avocados. So they're very nutrient dense, lots of vitamins and minerals and micronutrients in them. However, they do yield a lot of calories. So if I have a spoon full of peanut butter, that's right there like 100 calories for like a thumb size worth. So it's not good or bad. It just depends on your goals and what you're trying to achieve. And that's what this comes down to, is what your goals are as an athlete, or just if you're trying to lose some fat, if you're trying to bulk up. And that's when you kind of look at these 3 categories depending on your goals. So if you are an athlete, you're a golfer, maybe you've seen a lot of the Bryson DeChambeau stuff recently where he put on a lot of mass to increase his club head speed, more mass, moving the club faster, more power into his golf swing. He did a bulk where he was in a surplus of food, and a lot of that stuff was calorie-dense foods. We saw him, eating pizza and ice cream, and to a certain extent, that works. If you need to get the calories in and you don't want to feel really full all the time and you're an athlete, then this is where some of these foods are going to come in handy. I know, for an example, like Michael Phelps, like expending thousands and thousands of calories per day when he was in the Olympics in the pool. So majority of his diet was calorie-dense foods like pizza and cereal and things that he could eat easily, not feel too full after, but he was giving himself the energy he needed. Most of the people in the world, amateur athletes, aren't going to want to focus on this type of food. They're going to be right here and a little bit right here. Okay, so most of us are going to want to focus on those whole foods that are going to keep us full, keep us in our caloric budget. So unless you're like an endurance athlete or a Bryson DeChambeau, where you're trying to put on a lot of weight for your sport, these things can be incorporated. Okay, and that's when his goal was to gain a lot of mass. Go back to part 1, the energy balance. If you need to be in a surplus, but you're having trouble getting those foods in, you can go calorie-dense foods. But you always want to include these foods here. Okay, so always want to go back to the basics with eating whole foods, getting those nutrients in. You are going to feel better. You're going to perform better. You need to get your vitamins and minerals in. You know, vegetables, fruits and vegetables, lean cuts of meat. Those things are going to give you what you need from a performance standpoint. But at the end of the day, if you need the calories and the nutrients, include things like this. The nutrient-dense foods that are also dense in calories that you'll get the macros and the micros from. So a lot of information there, but ultimately look at your goals. Look how you're going to get your micronutrients and your macronutrients in on the large and small scale. See where most of your foods fall. Probably for 90% of the world, you should be falling more in this category for as far as health and balancing weight and performing well. All right, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you in the next one.